Chapter 17, Becoming a Modern Society, America in the Gilded Age. Your book defines Gilded Age for us. Of course, we defined it last chapter and talked about the great Mark Twain and his coinage of the phrase. Here we've got a little photo of the state of the art, if you will. We had a lot of good things to show off, technology-wise, and this being one of your highlights. The rise of the city, urbanization. Urbanization. We looked at industrialization. Now we're going to look at urbanization. Of course, why did so many people go to the cities? Well, let's look at the foreigner situation, the immigrant situation. And of course, this has got a lot to do with the increase of population in cities. But of course, this isn't exclusive. There were Americans that moved into these cities, migrants, if you will. These are immigrants. Notice Germany is, starts out like a house of fire, 27.5%, 15%, and then it really drops off. And then during the war, it virtually disappears. WW1 will begin in 1914 and end in 1918. 1919 is when they signed the peace treaty to formally end the conflict. One point worth looking at here is that once you get up to the turn of the century, you'll start to see a lot more immigrants coming in from Southern Europe and Eastern Europe. I mean, you look at the Italians to represent, and the Greeks to represent your Southern Europeans, and then let's look at Russia to kind of let us see about Eastern Europeans, and you'll notice Russia 3.5% to start with, 12.7, 18.3, and then it kind of levels off there during the war. But anyway, we see this movement from West. We'll see a lot more Eastern and Southern Europeans coming in. Now, this is going to be a huge difference because the Western Europeans who had migrated to the United States, the English primarily, they will discriminate against these Southern Europeans and these Eastern Europeans. Totally different backgrounds. Don't come from as democratic of a society, and it's gonna make a huge impact. Why did immigrants form ethnic enclaves? And here's your picture that the book gives you in Chicago. I've been there. It's awesome. I love the ethnicity of these big cities. I lived in Philly for 4 years. I visit Chicago quite often. And, of course, the ethnic enclaves to me means a good place to go get different kinds of food. And, we understand how those ethnic enclaves formed. Of course, everybody wants to be around their own kind. A buddy of mine defected from Poland in 1980, and he said his first day in New York City, he walked around, asking people in Polish what questions, and finally at the end of the day somebody answered him, and he was an elderly man, and he just walked over and hugged him. Well, and that's where he lived for the first few years when he came to the States, was in the Polish section. So I think we can all understand that. Wonderful picture here, wonderful picture. Oh my goodness. And there is one thing that this picture cannot fully illustrate. Whew, what about the odor? Nasty. I mean, even you watch these old westerns, and don't quite depict reality either as far as that goes. Political machines. Your chapter gets into political machines. Boss rule. Your first writing assessment of the semester will be on boss rule, political machines. Always heard that opportunity equals the mother of invention, and in this case the invention is the political machine. The political machines most definitely provided services that were otherwise not available. We do not have the infrastructure in our society to handle all these people. So a lot of these immigrants fell between the cracks, I guess, and the political machines come in, the political boss shows up, and he's doing favors for these immigrants, and the only thing he's asking in return is their vote. When they get to vote, vote for his people. And the importance of the vote, of course, illustrated by Boss Tweed here. As long as you let me count, what are you going to do about it? So he got his guys on city councilman and as the alderman or whatever. And, once he's got his guys in place, then they can run the city. And, his most famous, most sensational was getting the bid to build a courthouse for $250,000, and his boys started building the courthouse, and by the time they got done, they had milked the city out of $11 million. Well, that's 44 times what the original bid was when it got accepted. So you can kind of, wow, these things were expensive. They were corrupt. But, the silver lining, providing services that would have otherwise not been provided. With all these immigrants, you're going to have huge reaction. I mean, that seems to be our norm here. But let's look at this term, nativism. The nativist impulse. Nativism, you can see I've defined it as the intense preference of homespun values over the values of immigrants. Do not pretend like we're talking about flag waving. We're not talking about patriotism. We're talking about a hate group. We're talking about anti-foreigner activity. We're not just talking about rednecks being anti-foreigner. We're talking about some pretty sophisticated groups. Congress passing anti-foreigner, anything to stop or slow down immigration. They came up with intelligence tests. You can't have any idiots coming into the country. So they put up these barriers. Actually, I've been to Ellis Island, and these intelligence tests were putting blocks together. It looked like something for our kindergartners or daycare or something. But anywho, they resisted full-scale immigration restriction until the 1920s. We start with immigration restriction with Asians and related to the Chinese coming into America and setting up their Chinatowns. No attempt to assimilate into our society, and mostly men, a lot of vice, a lot of corruption, a lot of objection from the Americans in these Chinese coming over here and just, building the gates to Chinatown and living in their little enclave. Uncle Sam turning away. The depiction of immigrants. Desegregation. Look at what all gets saddled on the immigrants. We got a walk-in policy here, but look at this dude. Disease, poverty, anarchy, desegregation. They're going to even throw a little racial thing in there on him. And so superstition, that has to do with religion. So you can see this lovely depiction by Mr. Beard of our immigrant settlement houses. Were wonderful innovation, run by women, for women in these cities. I'm a baseball fan and I'm a Red Sox fan, so I just thought I'd leave my little baseball player with his Boston uniform on. Baseball cards, of course, they start out in cigarettes, they move on to bubble gum. And let's look at this third-party effort, the People's Party, the Populist Party, a third party. This is unique to American politics because of our two-party system. A third party is any party that challenges the main two. So go vote for the president next time, and you'll see the Democratic Party candidate, the Republican Party candidate, the Green Party candidate, the Reform Party candidate, the Communist Party candidate. You got all these different people running from all these little bitty parties that ain't got a chance. Those are all considered third parties. Third party is a category of parties. Any party that challenges our main two, like I said, unique to American politics. And this, the Populist Party, the People's Party, is on record as being the most successful third party that never made it. The greatest third party, I guess, would be the Republican Party, formed in 1854 to stop the spread of slavery into the federal territories. And by, as we know, in 1860, which was their second presidential election to participate in, they secured Abraham Lincoln as your prez, and then all the boop hits the fan and all that. Note the closeness of the elections. I mean, you got 51-48, although, you know, that's a big blowout. But look, he lost. Tilden loses in 76 with 51% of popular vote to 48. Electoral vote, he lost by 1. And, you know, the purpose of this here is just to show you how close. 48.5 to 48.1, 48.5 to 48.2. I mean, look at those razor-thin popular vote margins. And then, of course, in 92, you get your People's Party kicking butt, 1,000 votes there. 9%, they got 22% of the electoral, which I did a little math for us. 5% of the electoral vote is what that converts to. There is your People's Party, the root of the People's Party, the Populist Party. The root is the American farmer. But as you can see with this nice little picture, that this cartoon, that the People's Party was a hodgepodge, wasn't it? You got labor, greenback, so you know you got something to do with the economy. The Granger Party, that's farmers. Socialists, the Silver Party, Free Silver, Prohibition Party, anarchists, put them over there with socialists, these radicals, women's rights. I mean, what we find is that the People's Party or the Populist Party was unsuccessful at getting most of its agenda passed at that time. But if you fast forward 20 years, the Populist Party's ideas mostly were adopted. And so I guess you got to look at the purpose of a third party. Is it really to win? Well, yeah. I mean, you can't say you're running and you're not running to win. But realistically, like, if you know anything about Ralph Nader or, any of these third-party candidates, they're not going to win. But even though they might not admit it, what they're hoping to succeed at is maybe bringing issues to the table and getting those issues addressed by the two main parties, which is what's going to happen with the People's Party. In 1896, they even adopted the Democratic Party's candidate, and then, then what's the use of having your party? The Pullman strike, I wouldn't get into this detail with you, except for two things. And this will shut us down for the chapter. I want you to look at that third bullet. A government investigation concluded that the increased regulation of corporate power was needed. Increased regulation of corporate power was needed. Increased regulation. No more laissez-faire. No more laissez-faire government. No more hands-off government. Next chapter will be progressivism chapter. Chapter 18. And that is the big reform movement where we will address the ills of society. One of those ills was runaway corporate power. Monopoly, oligopoly, price fixing. We're going to address it. Also related to corporate power that needed to be regulated was how big business treated its labor. We don't have minimum wage. We don't have maximum work week. We don't have workers' comp. We don't have child labor. All that was left up to the states, and the states were inadequate to take on these corporate giants. Ohio told Standard Oil and John D. Rockefeller, you can't do what you're doing in Ohio because we've banned it in state law. So John D. packed up, and what did he do? He moved to Jersey. He moved to a state, New Jersey, where they didn't have all that corporate control, or regulation, I should say. How are you going to regulate railroads? A state can't regulate a railroad. Hell, it goes to all these different states. So what is it? Sometimes national government's going to have to step in and do something. And to regulate railroads, that's really the only way they're going to be able to do it. That's the only way we're going to be able to do it is for the national government to step in. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out on this Pullman strike, is it kind of introduces that next chapter for us. And then the next idea I want to bring up, when is using federal troops in a strike compatible with Republican principles? I want you to know what a republic is. A Republican form of government has nothing to do with the party. It's not the Republican Party. This party stole the name, just like the Democratic Party stole democracy, Well, I would hope that all of y'all are some type of, you're in favor of a democracy. So we're all Democrats, little d, not big D. Big D's the political party. We're all Republicans, little r. A republic, quite simply, is a representative form of government. a representative form of government. It's a democracy in that people have the power. A democracy is simply government by the people. You have a government by the people, but it's not a direct democracy. A direct democracy is when all the citizenry goes down and votes. Not practical. Back in the Greek city-state days, that was practical. It ain't practical here. So what we do is, instead of all of us going down there and voting on every daggone law, we elect representatives to go do that for us. It is a representative form of government. The people have the power, but they delegate that power to their elected representatives and officials. That's a republic. Don't ever forget it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, for which that flag stands, the republic. Your elected representatives make the decisions for you. That's the definition of a republic. All right? I'm done. Good luck on your tests. We'll get into progressivism and imperialism next week. The two isms, I believe I called it, on your tentative schedule. Until then, adios. Have a good one. Cheers.